Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in, and my name is Solomon SK for Whiskey and RPGs. If you're like me who play Black Desert Online, you don't have a lot of patience and just breeze through the dialogue because it's too boring to read all the text. Well, fortunately, it's a pretty quick crossover event, so I'll try to fill you in on what the deal is with some backstory as well. Just be warned, it's not really all that dramatic. I'm assuming the majority of the people who clicked on this video are from Black Desert Online, but in case you're not, BDO is an open-world fantasy MMORPG that involves you, as a character, on a quest to retrieve your memories and figuring out who you are. You are accompanied by a black spirit who, I guess, is entangled with your soul, or something like that, and the spirit plays an integral part on how the story plays out in the Black Desert universe. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Berserk, it's a manga, with an anime being created later on, involving a protagonist by the name of Guts, who was a mercenary for a group called the Band of the Hawk. But the leader named Griffith sacrificed his followers during what is called the Fifth Eclipse to become one of the God Hand. Think of them as something similar to the Horsemen of the Apocalypse from the Bible, more or less, and Griffith becoming the Fifth Horseman, now called Femto. But I want to focus on the two characters that we do see in BDO, and that's Skull Knight and Nosferatu Zodd. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Your first run-in with the Berserk character will be Skull Knight. Remember that Fifth Eclipse I told you about? Guts and his girlfriend Casca was supposed to die during that ritual, but Skull Knight saved them by escaping with them on his horse. She ends up going crazy later on, but I'll explain why towards the end of the video. He is 1,000 years old and has fought against the demons for equally as long. His past is shrouded in mystery, and his enigmatic nature makes him one of the most mystified and curious characters of the series. Nosferatu Zodd is not a god hand, but an apostate who are demons or inhumans who gain immense power by sacrificing the people that they love the most while they were still human. He has two forms, but we don't get to see his quote-unquote human form in BDO. Not to my knowledge anyway. In the series, he has an insatiable desire for battle and bloodshed, which actually feeds in pretty nicely with how that characteristic drives the gameplay and lore of BDO. Now, I know you guys watch a lot of movies, and if you're like me, you watched a lot of wrestling as well. There are a lot of epic rivalries that are just timeless. Kane versus The Undertaker, Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader, the T-800 versus the T-1000, Solid Snake and Big Boss, Pepsi and Coke. Okay, now I know you get the picture. And that's the kind of relationship Zodd and the Skull Knight has. They've been at each other for hundreds of years. So now that you guys are all caught up, let's begin with the storyline. You first start off talking to a couple of shaken up adventurers who said they were attacked by some monster. But when you head on over to the location called Marie Cave, you come across Skull Knight, attacking him by accident. I mean, he does look kinda unfriendly. He tells you that he and Zodd slipped into a dimensional rift, bringing them both to the world of Black Desert, and that he needs to find Zodd and bring him back to his universe before Zodd consumes a world that he doesn't belong to. You meet up with the Skull Knight again at another rift location and you help him defeat Zodd not far from it, but after the battle you learn that the rift has closed up and all chances of going back are lost. That's when the Black Spirit suggests that you talk to Oslin and Keflin about the situation because he is one of the few people who is very knowledgeable about rifts. By the way, rifts are a relatively large part in Black Desert Online. They generally are used to summon powerful bosses for some pretty awesome loot, so it's not some random thing that the devs put in the game in case you never played Black Desert Online before. Alston says that the only way to create another rift for the Skull Knight and Zodd is by creating a shard, but only through forbidden alchemy. He requires one Wiseman, one powder of crevice, and one trace of origin. After you gather all the materials and have Alston create the shard, you head on over to where you last saw the Skull Knight, only to find Zodd has left. You give him the shard to the knight and you have to defeat Zodd for the second time, this time with an entire group hopefully. After you defeat him, you complete the quest by talking to the Black Spirit, informing you that the Skull Knight and Nosferatu Zodd has left. Like I said before, not a whole lot of content. You can knock out the entire event story chain in about 30 minutes if you take advantage of the World Boss Discord for BDO, since players will be notifying the community where and when Zodd will spawn. If you want to get into Berserk now and you've never seen it before, because of this crossover event, let me give you a bit of a warning. It's a great anime and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Never read the manga though, but it does touch upon very real problems and subjects that could be very uncomfortable. Some scenes are really intense too. For example, remember that 5th eclipse I told you about? When Griffith turned into Femto, he forced himself on Casca without her consent, if you know what I mean. She was so traumatized from the entire event, she went crazy. I know this is something a lot of people can't handle, but I thought I'd put that in there in case something like that isn't your cup of tea. Thanks again for tuning in. If you like MMOs and RPGs, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. It definitely helps with the algorithms. Again, my name is Solomon SK for Whiskey and RPGs, and I hope you guys have a great day and blessed night. Cheers!